My dear brothers and my radiant sisters, when they send darkness your way, when they whisper curses behind your back, you do not need to shout or strike. You freeze it with salt, and you return it to its sender with silence and power. Evil doesn't always come crashing through the front gate with fire and thunder. It doesn't always announce itself with horns and fangs. Sometimes it shows up dressed in familiarity, wrapped in the face of someone you trust, clothed in a sweet voice, a kind word, a helping hand that masks the sharpness underneath. Sometimes evil speaks softly, smiles wide, and waits patiently for you to lower your guard. That's why you must understand this unshakable truth. Evil only enters where you leave the door open. There are many doors in your life, not just the ones built with wood and hinges, but doors in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit. Doors that open through your thoughts, your habits, your choices, your relationships. Doors that are left cracked through people-pleasing, wide open through desperation, swinging on their hinges through lack of self-worth. Evil studies where you're vulnerable. It watches the places where you doubt yourself. It listens for the silence between your prayers. It moves through the wounds you ignore and the emotions you suppress, because evil needs access, and access requires agreement. Sometimes your agreement isn't verbal, it's energetic. When you tolerate what violates your peace, when you continue to feed relationships that starve your soul, when you stay in places where your spirit shrinks, you are silently agreeing to let darkness take root. Not because you are evil, but because you have forgotten your power, forgotten that you are the gatekeeper, forgotten that nothing has the right to walk into your space without your permission. But silence is also permission. Inaction is still a choice. The enemy doesn't always need your yes. Sometimes all it needs is your refusal to say no. You must become sacred with your boundaries. You must treat your peace as holy ground. Guard your home. Guard your thoughts. Guard your energy the same way you'd guard a precious child. Because what enters your space begins to shape your life. What you entertain begins to feed you, and what you feed will either build you up or break you down. Don't wait until the damage is done to recognize the spirit behind the distraction. Don't wait until your dreams are delayed to discern the presence that has attached itself to your plans. If it pulls you away from your purpose, if it clouds your clarity, if it drains your joy, close the door. You don't owe access to everyone just because they knock. You don't have to keep letting in the same chaos just because it's dressed in new clothing. There's a difference between compassion and captivity. You can forgive without inviting someone back into your space. You can bless someone from a distance. You can love someone and still recognize that the spirit they carry is not meant to walk beside you. Not every familiar face is aligned with your future. Not every opportunity is divine. Not every request is a call. Discernment is your protection. Boundaries are your shield. Wisdom is your weapon. You are not at the mercy of dark energy. You are not helpless to spiritual attack. You are not fated to live in cycles of confusion, drama, heaviness, or fear. You are powerful, but your power must be active. Your authority must be intentional. If you do not know what you will allow what you don't even recognize. Evil loves an unaware soul. It thrives in homes where there is no prayer, in hearts that are too distracted to discern, in lives too busy to cleanse and too tired to resist. Clean your space, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Speak light over your life. Anoint your doorways. Bless your bed. Declare peace over your mind. When you wake up in the morning, set your intentions with fire and clarity. When you go to sleep at night, cleanse the day with gratitude and protection. You are not just living in a physical world, you are walking through an energetic one. Every conversation, every connection, every thought is a door. The question is not if evil is looking for entry. The question is, what doors have you left open without realizing it? Salt is one of the most overlooked sacred elements on earth, not because it lacks strength, but because its strength is so ancient, so subtle, so deeply woven into the fabric of our existence that we forget to honor it. We sprinkle it on our food, walk past it in grocery stores, wipe it from our foreheads when we sweat, and never pause to ask, what is this white crystal that finds its way into every part of life? Salt is not merely a spice or a preservative. Salt is a keeper of memory, a conductor of energy, a protector of space, a silent warrior in the spiritual world. Long before words were written on scrolls or prayers were whispered in pews, salt was being used by ancient peoples to purify, to protect, to preserve, to banish. It was traded like treasure, offered as covenant, and buried with the dead to ensure safe passage into the next world. Civilizations understood something we've forgotten. Salt holds power, not just in the physical, but in the spiritual. When you place salt in a room, you're not just seasoning the air, you're commanding the energy. You're drawing a line between what may enter and what must stay out. Salt absorbs, salt neutralizes, salt remembers. Have you ever noticed how the sea feels different? How walking into the ocean shifts something in you, not just emotionally, but spiritually? That's not imagination, that's ancient truth. The salt in the water knows how to pull from you what you didn't know you were carrying. It knows how to speak to grief that settled in your bones, how to call forth emotions that language cannot reach. That's because salt is a spiritual conductor. It doesn't just sit still, it moves with purpose. It draws out heaviness, it binds energy, it clears stagnant spaces. It doesn't scream or rage, it works in silence, in wisdom, in vibration. When used with intention, salt becomes a powerful agent of spiritual transformation. Place a bowl of salt near your door and it becomes a barrier. Sprinkle it across your thresholds and it becomes a sentry. Add it to your bath and it becomes a baptism. Pray over it and it becomes a sacred tool, one that listens, holds, releases. It doesn't require complicated rituals or expensive candles. All it needs is your awareness. All it needs is your clear intent. Salt doesn't ask for show, it responds to truth. Salt remembers the energy it touches. That's why it must be replaced, refreshed, treated with respect. When it becomes heavy, dark, clumped together, it's not spoiled, it's full of what it pulled from the air, full of the emotions it absorbed from your pain, full of the tension it quietly captured before it could settle into your space. Salt carries memory like a vessel, and when you dispose of it, you are not discarding trash. You are releasing energy back to the earth, saying, "This no longer lives here." That's the power of salt. It doesn't just clean, it witnesses. It doesn't just protect, it preserves. It doesn't just sit in your cupboard, it waits for your command. And when you remember what it is, when you treat it as sacred as your ancestors once did, it becomes more than a mineral. It becomes a boundary. It becomes a voice. It becomes a defense system against the unseen forces that move through jealousy, bitterness, envy, spiritual attack. You don't need to fear the energy around you when you understand how to command it. You don't need to run from darkness when you've learned to mark your space with light. You don't need grand ceremonies when you have something as humble and powerful as salt. Salt that remembers, salt that holds, salt that clears, salt that listens to your spirit when your words fail to come, salt that doesn't need to be explained, only respected. There are forces moving in silence that many refuse to name, not because they don't exist, but because the world has taught us to ignore what we cannot see. Yet energy is real, intention is real. A thought, a word, a curse, a silent wish of harm, they all carry weight. They ripple through the spiritual field like waves, unseen but deeply felt. When people send darkness toward you, whether through envy, manipulation, gossip, or quiet rituals, you may not always know the source, but you'll feel the shift. The heaviness in your chest, the unrest in your home, the confusion in your mind. These are spiritual signatures, warnings that something unseen is knocking at the edge of your peace. But you are not powerless. You are not left vulnerable in a world of energetic warfare. You've been given tools, and one of the most sacred, one of the most silently potent is freezing. Yes, freezing. The act of physically and spiritually interrupting what was sent to harm you. The practice of taking a name, a situation, an energy, and rendering it still, immobile, neutralized, silenced, not through violence, but through divine authority. Freezing is not vengeance. It is not rage. It is protection in its most dignified form. It is the calm refusal to be shaken, the spiritual pause button that disrupts a curse before it can land. Freezing works because energy needs motion. It needs flow. It thrives on attention, on emotion, on your reaction. The moment you engage with it, argue with it, worry about it, chase it, you feed it. You give it the very life force it seeks. But when you freeze it, you deny it movement. You lock it in a container and you say, you go no further. You interrupt the current before it grows. You cancel the assignment before it completes. You let heaven and earth know that your spiritual ground is not an open field, it is guarded. And this isn't superstition, it is ancient wisdom. It is the quiet knowledge passed down by healers, elders, midwives of the soul, those who knew how to survive in a world that was not always kind. When you take a name, a threat, a harmful pattern, and place it in water, wrap it in salt, speak over it, and freeze it, you are not casting a spell. You are enforcing spiritual order. You are saying that what was meant to move in chaos will now be bound in stillness, that what was meant to disturb will now sit in the cold silence of your command. Freezing is sacred because it requires intention. You must be clear about what you are binding. You must be centered in your purpose. You must not operate from hate, but from power. You are not cursing them. You are preserving yourself. You are not seeking revenge. You are reclaiming your right to peace. You are taking what was sent in motion and declaring that it shall no longer move within your realm. You are putting a stop to the spiritual leak before it becomes a flood. There is dignity in stillness. There is strength in not reacting. There is holiness in choosing to protect without engaging the same energy that tried to undo you. To freeze something is to pause its power, to drain its momentum, to strip it of influence. It is a reminder that not every battle needs your fight. Some battles need only your decision. Your calm, unshaken decision to interrupt what should never have touched your doorstep in the first place. This is what freezing does. It creates space. It allows you to breathe again, to think again, to remember who you are before the storm came knocking. It is an act of cleansing, of resetting the table, of removing unwelcome energy without ever raising your voice. Because the most powerful move is often the quietest one. And when your enemies come searching, they will find their own intentions frozen in the same silence they wished upon you. When the world turns chaotic, when betrayal strikes like lightning, when words are thrown like knives and silence becomes sharp as glass, the first instinct is to fight back. The human urge is to match energy with energy, pain with pain, fire with fire. We've been taught to protect ourselves by becoming just as loud, just as forceful, just as ruthless as the ones who tried to undo us. But that is a lie, an old and tired lie that leaves ashes on every hand involved. Because the truth is far more radical and far more powerful. You don't have to fight fire with fire. You can fight it with stillness. Stillness is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is not silence born from fear or submission. It is power mastered. It is energy conserved. It is wisdom in motion, or rather, wisdom in pause. When someone tries to stir chaos in your life, the most threatening thing you can do is not react. When they provoke, poke, manipulate, or gossip, what they are truly seeking is your energy. They want your outrage. They want your fear. They want your tears, your confusion, your desperation. Because your reaction feeds their intention. It validates their attack. It confirms that they still have reach. But stillness disrupts all of that. Stillness says, you are not worthy of my reaction. Stillness says, my peace cannot be stolen. It is not on loan. When you stand rooted, quiet, unmoved, you are not ignoring what happened. You are protecting your temple from becoming a battlefield. You are choosing not to become what tried to break you. You are refusing to mirror the madness. You are rising above it without ever lifting your voice. There is a sacred kind of warfare that doesn't look like warfare at all. It looks like praying while others plot. It looks like cleaning your home while others try to dirty your name. It looks like resting when you are being watched. It looks like smiling when the enemy wants confusion to sit on your face. Stillness is strategy. Stillness is divine restraint. Stillness is the hand of God over your spirit saying, be still and know. Stillness requires more strength than retaliation. It takes deeper confidence to say nothing than to speak prematurely. It takes greater authority to withhold a reaction than to deliver one that serves your ego. Anyone can throw words. Anyone can plot and clap back. But to remain still, to wait on wisdom, to respond only when the ground beneath your feet is steady, that is maturity. That is spiritual warfare in its highest form. Stillness is also a mirror. When someone throws fire and receives no flame in return, they are forced to face their own heat. They are left standing alone in the smoke of their intentions. Stillness exposes. It reveals. It shifts the narrative without words. When you choose stillness, you are trusting that truth does not need your fists. It only needs time. That what is real will rise, and what is false will burn itself out. Stillness clears the fog. It gives your spirit room to breathe, to discern, to align. It allows your ancestors, your God, your higher self to speak without competition. When you are quiet, you can hear. When you are still, you can see. The path becomes visible not when you're running through the fire, but when you sit down and let the flame show you what needs to be purified. So let the world rage if it must. Let the noise be loud. Let the accusations fly. But you stay still. You keep your peace sacred. You do not beg for justice. You become justice through the way you hold your power. You do not have to explain yourself to spirits that were never meant to understand your walk. Stillness is your response. Stillness is your defense. Stillness is where your real fire lives, not in destruction, but in discipline, not in fury, but in faith. There are weights you've been carrying that do not belong to you, burdens placed upon your shoulders by wounded hands, by careless words, by broken systems, by histories older than your own breath. Some of what you hold was never yours to hold. You've been walking through life with inherited pain tucked into your bones, with emotional debt passed down like an unwanted family heirloom. You've swallowed the silence of generations, worn the shame of others like skin, and made homes in places that never welcomed your spirit. But the earth, wise and ancient, is calling you now, not to explain, not to apologize, but to release, to return what never belonged to you in the first place. This world will teach you to hoard pain, to tuck it away in the folds of your heart, to hold on to betrayal until it becomes your identity, to carry guilt like it's your responsibility to pay for the actions of others. You are taught to perform strength, to smile through suffering, to keep the peace even when you are drowning in it. But that is not healing. That is not freedom. That is spiritual bondage dressed up as survival. You cannot bloom while dragging the weight of what was never meant to grow inside you. You cannot hear the voice of your own soul when it's muffled by the noise of someone else's expectations, anger, or sins. There comes a time when you must stand still, place your hands over your chest, and ask yourself, is this mine to carry? Is this fear, this grief, this shame, this memory? Was it born from my truth? Or was it given to me by someone who didn't know how to hold their own? Some of the heaviness you feel isn't yours. It's residue from others, energy that clung to you when you were too young to defend yourself or too kind to say no. But now you know. Now you feel the difference between what lives in you and what haunts you. And that awareness is the beginning of release. The earth was made to carry what the soul cannot. That is why our ancestors wept into rivers, screamed into trees, buried their pain in soil, and walked barefoot on the ground to be reminded that life can absorb sorrow. When you return what was never yours into the dirt, into the water, into the wind, you are not abandoning your past. You are honoring your healing. You are giving the earth what only she has the strength to digest. She knows how to compost pain, how to turn it into something holy. You cry and she listens. You kneel and she cradles. You let go and she says thank you. There is no ceremony more sacred than release. Not revenge, not explanation, not the apology you keep hoping for. Release, because you don't need to be bound to what broke you. You don't need to replay the scenes, rehearse the betrayal, or cradle the version of yourself that had no choice but to survive. That part of you deserves peace. And peace is not passive. Peace is active release. It's saying, I no longer carry what belongs to someone else. It's lighting the letter and watching the ash return to wind. It's placing your hands in salt water and letting it pull the residue of regret from your skin. It's walking away without bitterness, not because they deserved grace, but because you do. To return what was never yours does not mean forgetting. It means refusing to be defined by what was done to you. It means reclaiming your right to walk lightly, to move freely, to feel joy without guilt. It means acknowledging that not every wound is a life sentence, that you have permission to heal, to release, to rise. So if the weight is heavy, if your back is aching, and your heart feels like a locked chest, take a moment to ask yourself, what am I holding that was never mine? And when you find it, don't run from it. Return it, speak it, write it, cry it, bury it, burn it. Give it back to the earth, to the sky, to the divine rhythm that knows how to recycle pain into power. There is a quiet lie that moves through the world like smoke. The lie that you are helpless, that you must endure whatever comes, that you are at the mercy of energies and forces beyond your understanding, that you must bow beneath the weight of curses, envy, negativity, and spiritual attack because you don't know how to fight what you cannot see. This lie wants you small, it wants you silent, it wants you trembling in the face of shadows that were never meant to stand taller than your spirit. But the truth is not loud and it does not need to shout. The truth is steady, firm, ancient, and it is this: you are not defenseless, you are divine. The divinity in you is not something you earn, it is something you carry. It is not a title, but a birthright. You came into this world wrapped in spiritual authority, cloaked in the light of something holy, something that cannot be dimmed by gossip, betrayal, bad luck, or dark intentions. The very breath in your body is evidence of power. The way your soul rises even after heartbreak is proof. The fact that you are still here, still standing, still open to healing despite the battles you faced. That is divinity in motion. You are not a victim in a world of unseen forces. You are not walking blind through a spiritual battlefield. You are not fragile. You are not at the mercy of other people's rituals, projections, or opinions. You are protected, but protection requires awareness. And awareness requires you to wake up to your own power. Not the kind of power that dominates or controls, but the kind that speaks in stillness and moves through truth. The kind of power that lights candles with purpose, that blesses water with prayer, that places salt at the corners of the home, not out of fear, but out of knowing that energy listens, knowing that intention shapes reality, knowing that you are never alone, never exposed, never without weapons. Your weapons are not made of metal, they are made of discernment. They are made of boundaries. They are made of silence, of prayer, of sacred ritual. They are made of your ability to say no more without raising your voice, of your capacity to bless what is good and freeze what is not. You don't need to curse anyone to defend yourself. You don't need to retaliate. You don't need to match the energy sent to destroy you. All you need is alignment with your source, with your ancestors, with your inner voice that says, I will not be moved. Divinity means you are spiritually equipped. It means that your very name holds weight in the unseen realm, that your tears are not wasted but are counted, that your prayers don't bounce off ceilings, they split through dimensions. When you light a candle and whisper your intention, when you place a bowl of salt in your room and speak your truth into it, when you anoint your body with oil and walk through your home declaring peace, you are doing more than rituals. You are commanding atmosphere. You are shifting vibration. You are walking as someone who remembers who they are. You don't need to be a priest, a healer, a guru, or a spiritual master to be powerful. You only need to be aware that what you allow into your space will shape your spirit, aware that what you speak carries energy, aware that your body is a temple and your home is an altar. You are the guardian. You are the voice that says what may stay and what must go. You are the authority that grants or denies access. And when you remember that, you no longer fear evil. You no longer absorb other people's chaos. You no longer shrink at the sound of spiritual warfare. Because divinity cannot be touched without consent. Light cannot be conquered by shadows. And a soul that knows its own power cannot be possessed by anything lesser than truth. You are not just surviving, you are spiritually armed. You are not just enduring, you are commanding the energy around you with wisdom, with grace, and with unshakable knowing. You are not defenseless. You never were, you never will be. You are divine.